All right, so you know how we always say marriage is good for you, right? Like it's good for your heart.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out it might not be as simple as that.
You're telling me.
Marriage can actually be good and bad for our health.
Exactly.
Like a puzzle almost.
Yeah, it's super interesting, right? There's this interview we've got with Janice K. Keikolt-Glaser and Stephanie J. Wilson.
They're from Ohio State.
Yep, Ohio State University.
And they've really dug into this whole marriage and health thing.
They have, and what they found is kind of wild.
Okay, so spill the tea.
Yeah.
What's the deal with marriage being both good and bad for us?
So basically, their research shows that, yeah, on average, married people tend to have better health outcomes.
Okay, that makes sense. We've kind of heard that before.
Well, right, but it gets more interesting.
Okay, I'm listening.
So, like, we see lower rates of all sorts of diseases.
Like what kind of diseases?
Like everything. Heart disease, diabetes, some types of cancer.
Wow, really?
Yeah, and not just that, but married folks also tend to recover faster from surgery.
No kid.
It's true. And even their risk of cancer can be lower.
So it really is like a magic shield then?
Well, not exactly. I mean, the effects are definitely significant.
Like how significant are we talking?
Well, some studies suggest that the health benefits of a good marriage are comparable to the benefits of exercise.
Like going to the gym.
Totally. Or like eating a super healthy diet.
So being happily married is like hitting the gym every day.
It's not a perfect comparison, obviously, but you get the idea.
Okay, that's pretty impressive.
Right. And on the flip side, think about this. A troubled marriage could be as bad for you as smoking.
Wait a minute. Are you serious? Like my marriage could be as bad as a pack of cigarettes.
It's not a one-to-one thing, obviously, but you get the picture.
That's wild.
The research is really eye-opening.
So if a marriage is full of like conflict and stress,
Exactly.
that can actually harm my health.
It can. It really can.
Like what are we talking about here? Like what kind of health problems?
Well, for starters, things like obesity are more common in unhappy marriages.
Seriously? Just from being stressed out?
Well, it's more complicated than that, but stress definitely plays a role.
Okay, so what else?
You're also looking at a higher risk of cardiovascular disease, hypertension, and even metabolic syndrome.
Yikes, that's a lot.
It is, and it all comes back to this idea of stress and how our bodies react to it.
Okay, so break it down for me. How does stress actually make us sick?
So think about it like this. When we're stressed, our bodies pump out all these hormones like norepinephrine.
Norepinephrine, what's that?
It's a stress hormone.
Yeah.
And these hormones, they trigger inflammatory responses throughout the body.
Inflammation. Isn't that what happens when you get a cut and it swells up?
It's our body's natural defense mechanism against injury or irritation.
Okay, so the same thing happens when we're stressed out.
Exactly. But instead of a physical wound, the trigger is psychological stress.
Okay, I'm starting to see the connection.
And the problem is this. If that inflammation sticks around for too long, it becomes chronic.
And that's bad. Right.
It's really bad. Chronic inflammation is linked to a whole bunch of health issues.
So that bickering and tension in a marriage.
It's not just bad for our mood.
It's actually creating inflammation in our bodies.
Exactly. And to make matters worse, think about the unhealthy habits that we often turn to when we're stressed.
Oh, I know this one.
Right. Like, what do you reach for when you're feeling overwhelmed?
See a big bowl of ice cream. Maybe a glass of wine or two.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. We tend to overeat, we skip workouts, we don't get enough sleep.
Yeah, and maybe we pour that extra glass of wine to unwind.
And all of those things, they just fuel the inflammation even more.
It's like a vicious cycle.
Exactly. You're stressed, you make unhealthy choices.
Yeah.
Those choices increase inflammation, and the increased inflammation makes you more susceptible to illness.
It's like dominoes, one thing knocking into the next.
Precisely. And the crazy thing is, researchers have actually been able to see this happening in the lab.
What do you mean?
They brought couples into the lab and had them discuss their disagreements while they were monitoring their stress hormone levels.
Wait, so they're sitting there arguing about who forgot to take out the trash while scientists are taking their blood?
Pretty much, yeah.
That's wild.
It is, and what they found is fascinating.
So tell me what happened.
As the arguments got more heated, they watched those stress hormone levels rise in real time.
Wow, so it's not just in our heads.
Yep.
The stress of a bad marriage is actually physically impacting our bodies.
It absolutely is. And this whole picture gets even more complicated when you add depression into the mix.
Depression.
Yeah, depression, which is often linked to marital distress.
That makes sense. I mean, being unhappy in your marriage could lead to depression.
Right.
And then feeling depressed could make it even harder to have a healthy relationship.
Exactly. It's a two-way street.
And of course, depression itself comes with its own set of health risks.
Absolutely. Heart
Yeah.
disease, weakened immune system, you name it.
So it's like this tangled web of marital distress, depression, inflammation, and unhealthy behaviors.
It really is.
And it's all contributing to a decline in our overall well-being.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered how a difficult marriage can directly harm our health.
Right.
But what about a happy marriage where one partner gets sick?
That's a great question.
Like, you'd think having a loving and supported spouse would be a good thing, right?
You would, but the research suggests that it's not always that straightforward.
Really? Why is that? You've got someone there to help you through a tough time.
True, but it seems that even in a loving marriage, the emotional toll of caregiving can be really heavy,
I can imagine.
especially when you're talking about chronic illnesses like Alzheimer's disease.
That would be incredibly challenging.
It's emotionally draining to watch your partner suffer.
Yeah.
And the added responsibilities of caregiving can be overwhelming.
So all that stress manifests physically.
It does.
Like, what kind of physical effects are we talking about here?
Studies show that people caring for chronically ill partners often have weaker immune responses. Their wounds heal more slowly.
Wow.
And you guessed it, those inflammation markers we talked about earlier, they're elevated too.
So even though they're in a loving relationship, the stress of caregiving is still impacting their body in a negative way.
It is, and here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Research has actually shown that supportive spouses sometimes have even stronger physical reactions when they see their partner in pain.
What do you mean?
Like their blood pressure spikes even more than the person who's actually experiencing the pain.
Whoa, so they're like literally feeling their partner's pain?
That's one way to think about it.
It's like their body is mirroring the stress their partner is going through.
Exactly. Researchers believe this might be because of increased empathy and a deeper emotional connection.
That's pretty amazing.
It is, but regardless of the reason, it's clear that supporting a sick partner can have unintended consequences for the caregiver's health.
That's heavy stuff.
It is, but it's important to understand these dynamics.
So we've seen how a troubled marriage can directly impact our health. But what about the more subtle ways our partners influence us?
You mean like how our habits can rub off on each other?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, if my partner has a bad habit, am I more likely to pick it up too?
That's a great question. And you know what? The answer is yes.
Seriously.
You better believe it. It's this thing called health contagion. Basically, it means our habits can spread to the people we're closest to.
Health contagion, huh? So, like, if my partner is a total health nut,
Yeah.
I might actually start eating better too, just from being around them.
It's totally possible you're more likely to make healthier choices when you're constantly exposed to them.
That makes sense. But what about the other way around? Like, if my partner has some bad habits,
Like what?
I don't know, say they smoke or have a really unhealthy diet,
Ah.
am I more likely to pick those up too?
Unfortunately, yeah. There's a good chance you might. The research on this stuff is pretty wild.
Seriously.
Yeah. For example, did you know that if one partner is obese, the other partner's risk of becoming obese, like, doubles?
Wow, that's crazy. It's like our partners are rubbing off on us.
It's true, we're constantly influenced by the people we spend the most time with.
It makes you think, huh?
It really does. It's a reminder that our social environment has a huge impact on our health.
So it's not just about willpower.
Nope. It's about our surroundings, our habits, the people we love.
And you mentioned this gets even more important as we get older. Why is that?
Well, a couple of things happen as we age. First, our social networks tend to shrink.
Yeah, that's true.
We might retire, our kids move away, that kind of thing.
Right, so we end up relying more on our spouses for support.
Exactly. And that means if one partner develops unhealthy habits or gets sick, it can have a bigger impact on the other person.
So the stakes are higher as we get older.
You could say that, and there's a physiological component too.
What do you mean?
Older adults are just more vulnerable to stress in general. Their immune systems aren't as strong, inflammation is more likely.
Right, and they're more susceptible to all those age-related illnesses.
Exactly. So the added stress of a troubled relationship or a sick partner can really hit them hard.
It's like adding fuel to the fire.
That's a good way to put it. So, all this might be sounding pretty doom and gloom.
It kind of is, yeah.
But the good news is just being aware of these dynamics can make a big difference.
Awareness is key.
It empowers us to make positive changes.
So let's talk solutions. What can we actually do to create healthier relationships and protect our well-being?
Well, one of the most effective things couples can do is go to therapy.
Therapy.
It's not for everyone, of course, but it can be incredibly helpful.
I guess that makes sense, like a therapist can give you tools to work through problems.
Exactly. They can help you communicate, better manage conflict, and strengthen your bond.
It's like having a personal trainer for your relationship.
I love that analogy. It's so true. Just like a trainer helps you build a stronger body, a therapist can help you build a stronger relationship.
I like that. So what are some of these healthy habits for relationships? What can we do to improve our communication?
Well, the first step is learning to actually express your needs and feelings. Meaning, instead of bottling things up or expecting your partner to read your mind, you actually say what's on your mind.
Clearly and directly.
Right. But also respectfully, it's not about blaming or attacking your partner.
So it's about finding that balance between being honest and being kind.
That's it. And on the flip side, you also need to be a good listener.
Oh, yeah. That's a tough one.
It means really trying to understand your partner's perspective, even if you don't agree with them.
So putting aside your own judgments and just trying to see things from their side.
Exactly. It's about being present and engaged in the conversation.
Not just waiting for your turn to talk.
Exactly. And, there are actually specific techniques that can help with this, like active listening.
Active listening.
It's more than just hearing the words your partner is saying.
Yep.
It's about paying attention to their body language, their tone of voice, really trying to grasp the emotions behind what they're saying.
So it's about being present in the moment, picking up on those subtle cues.
Exactly. And it also involves reflecting back what you're hearing to make sure you're understanding correctly.
So you might say something like, "It sounds like you're feeling frustrated because I haven't been listening to you."
That's a great example. It shows your partner that you're really trying to get where they're coming from.
Which can help to de-escalate the situation.
For sure. And when it comes to actually resolving conflicts, it's important to shift the focus from winning to finding a solution that works for both of you.
It's about compromise.
Exactly. You're on the same team, remember. You're working together to find common ground.
Are there any other strategies that can help couples navigate conflict?
Well, there's this idea of fighting fair.
Fighting fair, what's that?
Basically, it means avoiding personal attacks, generalizations, bringing up past grievances.
So instead of saying, "You always do this," or "You never listen to me."
Right. You focus on the specific issue at hand and express your feelings in a more constructive way.
That makes sense. It's about staying focused on the present moment.
Exactly. And it's also super helpful to take breaks when things get too heated.
Like a timeout.
Exactly. If you feel yourself getting overwhelmed or about to say something you'll regret, just step away for a bit.
Calm down and come back to it later.
Exactly. Sometimes you just need a little space to gather your thoughts before you can have a productive conversation.
I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah.
But what about those situations where one partner is chronically ill? Are there any special communication tips for those cases?
Absolutely. Empathy and validation are even more important in those situations.
What do you mean by that?
Well, it's about acknowledging your partner's feelings and experiences, even if you can't fully understand what they're going through.
So instead of trying to fix the problem or offer advice,
Right, you just listen and try to put yourself in their shoes.
even if you can't take away their pain, you can still offer your support.
That's the key. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is just listen without judgment and validate their feelings.
So simple, yet so powerful.
It really is.
This all sounds great in theory, but I'm sure there are times when it's really hard to put these strategies into practice.
Oh, absolutely. Relationships are messy, emotions run high. It's not always easy.
So what's the key to making it work?
Patience, both with yourself and with your partner.
Patience, huh? Easier said than done sometimes.
True. But remember, building a healthy relationship is a marathon, not a sprint.
We need to pace ourselves, stay hydrated, have a good cheering section.
Exactly. And
Right.
just like training for a marathon, it takes effort, dedication, a willingness to learn and grow.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Beautifully said.
This has been so insightful. It really highlights how connected our relationships and our health truly are.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
It is, and I have to say, one thing that really surprised me in the research was this whole idea that our relationships can even impact the bacteria in our gut.
But that microbiome,
Yeah, when I first heard about that, I was like, what?
it does sound a little out there.
But the more I learn about it, the more it makes sense.
Right, because remember how we talked about stress triggering the release of hormones like norepinephrine?
Yeah, and how those hormones can fuel inflammation throughout the body.
Well, it turns out that chronic stress, including the stress from relationship problems, can mess with the balance of bacteria in our gut.
So explain this to me like I'm 5. What does a stressed out gut actually look like?
Okay, so imagine the lining of your intestines as a fence.
A fence?
Yeah, a fence that's supposed to keep things in their proper place.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
But when we're chronically stressed, that fence starts to get holes in it.
A leaky fence.
Exactly. Researchers call it a leaky gut.
Leaky gut, yeah.
Not a pretty picture, right?
Not at all.
Not at
So
all.
what happens when our gut gets leaky?
Well, when that lining is compromised, bacteria and toxins that should stay inside the intestines can leak out into the bloodstream.
Uh-oh.
And that triggers an inflammatory response throughout the body.
So it's like the security system is down and all sorts of troublemakers are getting into places they shouldn't be.
That's a great way to put it. And of course, we know inflammation is linked to a whole host of health problems.
There's a domino effect. Stress disrupts leaky gut, triggers inflammation, and chronic inflammation increases the risk of everything from heart disease to autoimmune disorders.
That's all connected?
It's amazing how our emotions, our relationships, our gut health, our overall well-being, it's all intertwined.
It really is, and I think that's the big takeaway from this whole conversation.
What's that?
Our relationships aren't just some separate part of our lives. They're woven into the very fabric of our health.
This has been an incredible journey. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of marriage and its impact on our health.
Me too.
Any final words of wisdom for our listeners before we wrap things up?
I'd just say this. Pay attention to your relationships, nurture them, communicate openly, and don't hesitate to seek help if you're facing challenges.
Because our health depends on it.
It really does.
It's beautifully said. This has given us all a lot to think about.
I hope so.
As we go about our day, interact with our loved ones, maybe even navigate a disagreement or two,
Yeah.
we can ask ourselves, is this interaction nourishing my relationship? Is it supporting my well-being?
Great questions.
Food for thought.
Uh-huh.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into marriage and health.
It's been a pleasure talking with you. Until next time.
Okay, so we're back. And, as we've been talking about all this,
Yeah.
I keep thinking about how we often try to, separate different parts of our lives.
What do you mean?
Like, we focus on eating healthy, right?
Yeah.
Working out and finding that work-life balance.
Yeah.
But we don't always think about how our relationships fit into all of that.
It's true. Our relationships are a huge part of our overall well-being.
And this deep dive has really shown just how powerful that connection is.
It really has.
We've seen how a good marriage can be so good for us, like a source of strength and resilience.
Right.
But a bad marriage can actually increase our risk of all sorts of things.
From heart disease to depression.
It's wild.
It is. And it just goes to show how important it is to take care of our relationships.
To nurture them and address any problems that might be causing stress or conflict.
Absolutely.
Because even if we're doing everything else right,
Like eating healthy and exercising.
a toxic relationship can totally sabotage our efforts to be healthy.
It's like trying to build a house on a shaky foundation.
I love that analogy.
No matter how strong the walls are, if the foundation is weak, the whole thing is vulnerable.
That's so true.
Yeah.
So it's not just about adding marriage to our list of healthy habits,
It's about recognizing that our relationships are the foundation.
the bedrock of our well-being.
Exactly. And the research really empowers us to be proactive about this.
What do you mean?
It's not about waiting for problems to happen. It's about investing in our relationships from the start.
So things like learning to communicate better and resolve conflicts,
Those are the keys to building a strong foundation.
and those are skills we can learn and practice right.
Absolutely. It's like working out a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
So active listening, expressing our needs, clearly finding ways to compromise.
Those are all relationship workouts that can really make a difference.
I like that a lot. And speaking of workouts, did you know that our relationships can even affect the bacteria in our gut?
The gut microbiome.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
When I first heard about that, I thought it sounded a little crazy.
It does sound a bit out there.
But then I started thinking about it, and it actually makes a lot of sense.
Oh, so.
Well, we've been talking about how stress releases all these hormones, right, like norepinephrine,
Right.
and how those hormones can lead to inflammation throughout the body.
Exactly.
So it turns out that chronic stress, like the kind we experience in a difficult relationship, can really disrupt the balance of bacteria in our gut.
It's like throwing a wrench into the whole system.
Okay, so explain this to me like I'm 5. What does a stressed out gut actually look like?
All right, so picture the lining of your intestines is like a fence.
A fence, okay.
A fence that's supposed to keep things where they belong.
Makes sense.
But when we're stressed, that fence starts to get holes in it.
Holes in the fence.
It becomes what researchers call a leaky gut.
Leaky gut. Oh, that sounds pleasant.
Yeah, not so much. So what happens when our gut gets leaky is that bacteria and toxins that should stay inside the intestines can leak out into the bloodstream.
Oh, that doesn't sound good.
It's not good at all. It triggers an inflammatory response throughout the body.
So it's like the security system is down,
Yeah.
and all sorts of troublemakers are getting in where they don't belong.
Precisely, and we already know that inflammation is linked to all kinds of health problems.
So it's a chain reaction. Stress disrupts the gut. Leaky gut triggers inflammation, and chronic inflammation increases our risk of everything from heart disease to autoimmune disorders.
It's all connected.
It's incredible, really, to think about how intertwined everything is.
Our emotions, our relationships, our gut health, our overall well-being.
It's all part of one big system.
It really is, and I think that's the most important thing to remember.
What's that?
Our relationships aren't some separate thing. They're woven into the very fabric of who we are.
And of how healthy we are.
Exactly.
This has been an amazing conversation.
I've really enjoyed it.
It's given me a whole new perspective on marriage and its impact on our well-being.
Me too.
Any final words of wisdom for our listeners before we sign off?
I would just say this. Pay attention to your relationships. They're precious.
They are.
Nurture them, communicate openly, and don't be afraid to seek help if you need it.
Because our health really does depend on it.
It does.
Well said. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of marriage and health.
It's been my pleasure.
We've covered a lot of ground today, from the surprising health benefits of a good marriage to the very real risks of a troubled one.
We talked about the power of communication and the importance of seeking help when we need it.
And we even explored the connection between our relationships and the bacteria in our gut.
It's all connected.
It really is.
Yeah.
So as you go about your day, remember to cherish those close connections and take care of your relationships.
And yourselves.
Absolutely. Because a healthy marriage is a beautiful thing.
It is.
Thanks for listening, everyone. And we'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.